How did a man of such humble beginnings, Adolf Hitler, ascend to the heights of power, plunging the world into the most devastating war in history? The answer to this question is embedded in his early life experiences, which were marred by hardship and adversity. Born on a chilly April day in 1889 in a quaint town named Braunau am Inn, located in Austria, Adolf Hitler had had a rather ordinary beginning. His father, Alois Hitler, was a stern and volatile civil servant, a man who ran his household with an iron fist. Hitler's early years were colored by the harsh discipline and unpredictable rages of his father. This caused a lot of friction and tension in their relationship, which turned into open resentment and rebellion as Adolf grew older. This period of his life was further marred by the untimely death of his younger brother Edmund, who was the apple of Adolf's eye. Edmund's death profoundly shook Adolf and brought about a change in his behavior, turning him into an introverted and solitary individual. He seemed to take solace in his own thoughts and ideas, further distancing himself from the outside world. In this period, Adolf also started developing a strong fascination with German nationalism. This sentiment was not well received in his native Austria, a country where the dominant sentiment was towards Austria-Hungarian nationalism. This rejection of his beliefs further fueled Adolf's resentment for the establishment and the system in place, driving him more towards extremism. The sense of nationalism that was sparked during his early years was further cemented during his time in Vienna. After the death of his parents, Adolf moved to Vienna, where he lived a life of poverty. He painted postcards and advertisements for a living, struggling to make ends meet. But it was during this period that his political ideology started taking shape. Hitler found Vienna to be a place of political unrest and social change, where his ideas about racial purity and German nationalism found new ground. He was greatly influenced by the political climate of the city. The anti-Semitic rhetoric prevalent in the city's political and social circles resonated with his own beliefs, giving a more concrete shape to his hatred towards Jews. Moreover, the literature of the time, which was rife with ideas of Aryan supremacy and anti-Semitic propaganda, further fueled his prejudices and biases. Books like The Foundations of the 19th Century by Chamberlain and Lanz's Ostara left a deep impression on his mind, effectively shaping his worldview. All these experiences and influences gradually shaped Hitler's political ideology. His life experiences, coupled with the socio-political environment of the time, played a crucial role in his ideological development. Thus, it can be seen that the seeds of hatred and bigotry that led to one of the darkest periods in human history were sown in the early years of Adolf Hitler's life. It was here that Hitler's anti-Semitic views began to take root, influenced by the political climate and the literature of the time. In 1913, Adolf Hitler, a name that would later resonate with a chilling note of evil across the globe, moved to Munich. This city was to play a significant role in shaping his beliefs and ambitions, eventually leading him down a path that would change the world's history. When the First World War broke out the next year, he did not hesitate to enlist in the German army, eager to serve his country. The war proved to be a turning point in Hitler's life, instilling in him a deep-rooted nationalist fervor. It was here that he first developed his militaristic outlook, witnessing firsthand the brutality of warfare and the power of nationalism. He served with distinction, but the end of the war marked the beginning of a time of bitter disillusionment for him. The end of World War I saw Germany in shambles. The country's infrastructure was decimated, its economy crippled, and it was burdened by the weight of crippling debt. The Treaty of Versailles, an agreement supposed to bring a long-lasting peace, instead placed the blame squarely on Germany, adding insult to injury. It was in these conditions that Hitler's resentment began to fester. Hitler was convinced in his heart and mind that it was not military defeat, but rather the betrayal of civilians at home and the influence of Jews that had led to Germany's downfall. His conviction that Jews were the root cause of Germany's problems was a seed that, over time, grew into a dangerous obsession. In the wake of the war's aftermath, Hitler sought for a platform his beliefs. He found it in the German Workers' Party, a group of like-minded nationalists whose ideologies struck a chord with him. This party would later evolve into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, more commonly known as the Nazi Party. Hitler's charisma, bolstered by his powerful oratory skills, helped him rapidly rise through the ranks. By 1921, just a few years after joining, he was the leading figure of the party. His followers saw him as a visionary, a beacon of hope in a time of deep despair. In 1923, Hitler staged the Beer Hall Putsch, a failed coup attempt to seize power in Munich. Failed coup led to his imprisonment, but it was far from the end for Hitler. His time in prison, rather than serving as offered him the opportunity to refine his ideology and plans for the future. He used his time behind bars to author Mein Kampf, a book that outlined his political ideology and future plans for Germany. It was a manifesto of sorts, a roadmap to a future where Germany was a mighty, unassailable nation, free of the influences he believed were corrupting it. Upon his release, Hitler began the colossal task of rebuilding the Nazi Party and working to gain popular support. The economic turmoil of the 1930s, exacerbated by the Great Depression, created the perfect environment for a charismatic leader like Hitler to rise to power. Germany was in desperate need of hope and change, and Hitler offered them just that. His promises of a brighter future, coupled with his ability to tap into the anger and resentment felt by many Germans, allowed his popularity to skyrocket. In 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, marking the beginning of one of the darkest periods in human history. Once in power, Adolf Hitler moved briskly with a ruthless determination and an unwavering ambition to establish his absolute control over Germany. With an iron hand, he began to systematically eliminate his political adversaries and anyone deemed a threat to his rise. His regime was characterized by a series of purges, some violent, others more surreptitious, but all with the single aim of cementing his hold on the nation's reins. These purges were not just confined to his political enemies, but extended to significant portions of society he deemed undesirable or unfit for his vision of a Germanic utopia. The most horrific manifestation of his warped ideology was undoubtedly the systematic oppression and marginalization of Jews. This marked the onset of the Holocaust, one of the darkest chapters in human history. A genocide of unimaginable proportions unfolded, seeing 6 million Jews systematically exterminated by the Nazi machinery. Hitler's reign of terror didn't stop within Germany's borders. It was a contagion that spread, igniting the flame of war, the European continent. In 1939, Hitler's aggressive foreign policies and an expansionist ideology that sought to forge a new world order under the Nazi banner led to the outbreak of World War II. His ambition, unchecked by the international community, soon plunged the world into chaos. The globe witnessed a war of unprecedented scale and destruction, fueled by Hitler's insatiable ambition and the belief in racial superiority. Yet, as the progressed, fortunes changed. By 1945, despite the initial successful blitzkrieg tactics, with Allied forces closing in from both east and west, Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich began to crumble. The tide had turned, the invincibility of the Third Reich was shattered, and the inevitability of defeat became increasingly apparent. His vision of a world under Nazi rule, a dream that had once seemed his grasp, was now nothing more than a fleeting illusion. The world watched as the architect of one of history's greatest atrocities met his end. On April 30th, 1945, in a bunker in Berlin, hidden away from the world that he had hoped to conquer, Hitler died by suicide. In conclusion, Hitler's life, from his humble beginnings to his rise to power and eventual downfall, was marked by a terrifying single-mindedness and a destructive ideology. His impact on world history is undeniable, having instigated a war that resulted in millions of deaths and reshaped the geopolitical landscape. However, his story also serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and ideological extremism.